people, I'm so happy that you are here. Warmly welcome to this informal chat between, like, it's just me and Louise and you guys in a bar having, well, in my case, a glass of water because it's 11 in the morning and I am teaching for the rest of the afternoon. But for those of you in Australia, it's evening, right? And you can, you are having one, right? Yes, Louise. Yes.
It's water that strangely smells like gin.
It's the kind of water that smells like gin. All right. So welcome and cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Cheers. So what we're doing here is, so for those of you who don't know me, my name is Rikke and I am a Danish psychologist living in Sweden, working with acceptance and commitment therapy, basically doing training, supervision, and implementing ACT in various settings. And approximately once a month, I get together with an awesome human being and, we have a cocktail and we talk about the stuff that matters to us. And I thought, why don't we invite my entire larger family, you guys from all over the world, to come join us. So during this hour, you can interact with us, you can ask questions if you want to, or you can also, just watch us. But just know that this is an invitation for us to hang out for an hour and to talk about stuff that matters. And yes, I'm so happy that this is happening. If you have ever been to any of my workshops or trainings, you will have heard me talk about Louise Hayes. And I'm going to embarrass you, Louise, because I know, you don't like it when I talk about you as a rock star because you are so modest. And so I know that. But, if you've ever been to a workshop, I talk about Louise Hayes all of the time because you are such an inspiration to me. And also, you will probably have heard me talk about when I, in 2018, took Louise's advice and went to Nepal. Like me and Mom, me and Nina, we thought, why don't we go to Nepal, have a little wine, walk around, look at the nature, and Louise and Mingma and I know Jenny's here, you were with us. We were mountain climbing and we were driving in buses where, some of the time there was no road, like we were, yeah. And so whenever I will talk about fear and being out of my comfort zone, like Nepal is the trip that I will refer to. And also going with my mom, I know Mom is here, but like having so many days together where you can talk and connect and without internet, and it's just amazing. So Louise Hayes, I love you and I so love that you are here. And I'm guessing that most of the people who are with us now, they know who you are, but for the can you just tell us, who are you?
Wow, I think that is the nicest introduction I have ever had. And for those of you who know Rikke, of course, you know that she's a rock star in so many ways. And I think you and I are like opposites. Your ability to express your compassion and your love just comes out everywhere. And I just kind of sneak it out in little bits. So we're like opposites. But thank you for inviting me. So, and you know how much I admire and love you so much, and your mum, Nina. And so a little bit about me, the professional stuff. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm an ACT therapist. I work with young people and mainly women. I work in private practice, but I used to be an academic in, a university setting, employed, as opposed to an academic who's not employed, which I am now. And I write some books with my friend and co-author, Joseph Ciarrochi, on using ACT. And we developed the model called DNAV, which is a developmental model of ACT. And we are this far away from the adult DNAV book, which is really exciting. Today it's exciting. I'll tell you later about when it wasn't exciting. Then the other thing I do is run trips outside of COVID, run trips to Nepal for something we call mindful adventures, which is about learning as a professional and as an adult about yourself.
And about fear.
That too.
Exactly.
And acceptance. That's the topic of today.
And acceptance, fear and acceptance, because they go well together, don't they? And so I just wanted to highlight what you were saying about the work that you are doing with and for young people. And I think that in Scandinavia, where I am, I know I think everybody that I work with have your books on working with adolescents. I have a puppy here, like he was on camera earlier. I told him to be quiet, and I don't think he understands that. He's just a few weeks old. So there's a puppy here. Sorry about that. Anyways,
he's totally sweet and totally Scandinavian. He's white, so he looks like
very
he fits.
white, and he's now chewing on me. So yeah, I'm multitasking. And so the work you are doing with young people, I think has inspired. I know it has inspired so many of us. So I just wanted to highlight it, that you are like you and Joseph are the go-to guys when it comes to working with young people. And I know your model is widely used over here also. So, all right, come on, baby. All right.
Oh, you really have to see Mio in the.
All right.
Mio, I think Mio.
Yes, Mio. All right. So here's the baby boy. All right. He's chewing on my microphone. So, Louise.
Doesn't he look Scandinavian? He looks like he belongs on a piece of Danish furniture. See?
Hello. Louise, tell me a little bit about, so the topic of this webinar, we're talking about acceptance and how acceptance sometimes can be hard. Can you tell us a little bit about your thoughts on acceptance?
Oh, now I've been thinking about this. Mainly I've been trying to accept that this webinar will not be as good as the last one you did with Lisa. No, I'm joking. Well, maybe only a little bit joking.
I'm just going to pause you, because I think this is amazing, because you and I have spoken about this. So a month ago, I did a webinar with Lisa Coyne, and it was very popular, and it's been spread in various channels. And because that went well, you now tell me that you're so nervous because you're afraid this won't be equally as good. And it's just, I'm not saying this to out you. I'm just saying that this is so interesting, because this is how the mind works, right? We keep comparing ourselves to others, and we feel like, we're not good enough. Yes.
Absolutely. And acceptance is part of that. And, I think the thing with acceptance is we talk about acceptance, but we don't always live acceptance. And I think that when you experience acceptance, it's kind of like an aha kind of moment where you sometimes think, why have I never done that before? But then you immediately go back into non-acceptance again and trying to be different and trying to be that kind of person. So I was thinking about what I wanted to talk with you about with acceptance. And I think my journey with acceptance has been difficult, but no more difficult than lots of people's. But my mother had very severe anxiety, and so acceptance with someone who has really severe anxiety is really difficult. And so Mum passed away last year. She was just a few weeks off 99. And she'd had a difficult life. She'd had some domestic violence and then raised 6 children by herself. All by herself from the time I was a little wee one. She raised 6 children by herself, and she worked really hard. She worked like 12-hour days in dog food factories, putting the cans on dog foods and doing all sorts of hard things. And she could do all those really hard things. But acceptance, she couldn't do it. Emotions, she couldn't do it. It's like when someone gets severe anxiety, acceptance of that stuff inside you is the hardest thing to do. And she couldn't do it. And she taught me not to do it. And I don't mean that as a criticism, just a statement. She would always say, be strong, be independent, never show your weak side. And I don't think I ever saw her cry, ever. She was tough. She was so tough, but not always, of course. She just managed it with avoidance. And then last year, she was in lockdown in COVID. She was in aged care, and I think she spent about 4 months mostly in lockdown in a little tiny room in aged care. And I would call her and say, because we couldn't visit, I'd call and say, how are you, Mum? And she would say, I'm fine. It's much better than World War II. I'm fine.
Yeah.
And that was her way of just kind of pushing away any emotion. She never, ever said, this is really difficult. And then COVID became a little better here, and they opened up her and they let the aged care people out of their room. And she had been in this little tiny room for 6 weeks straight. And she came out of her room and she walked down the corridor and she couldn't walk. So within all that confinement time, she lost all of her fitness and she just deteriorated. And then it became clear that she was not going to get better, that she was passing away and that she was palliative. And her non-acceptance was so strong. So when they finally let us in, they let us to visit her because they knew that she was passing. And they said, okay, you can now visit. So we went in and we were fully masked, one person at a time, half an hour at a time. Just 2 people a day, and we would be fully masked, and I would sit by her bedside knowing that she was passing away, and she would be so anxious. She would say to me, why aren't the doctors doing anything? Why can't they make me better? Why aren't they doing tests? Why aren't they doing this? What is happening to me? Why can't they make it better? And it would go around and around and around. And it was so difficult, I couldn't stay in the room. I would leave because here's my mum passing away, and I would leave. And I actually messaged my friend Lisa and I said, she's going to fight right until the end. She's going to keep fighting right until the end. And I can't even sit by my mother's bed because it's so anxiety provoking for her, for me to be in the room. Yeah. And then I eventually spoke to her doctor, who she'd had for 30 years. And I said to her doctor, please tell Mum she's dying because I can't do it. Yeah. Please tell her that she's dying. And she trusted him like a priest, you know. And so he told her, and instantly this woman changed from not being able to accept anything to just complete acceptance. It was beautiful. I sat by her bed. She told stories. She rang her friends and said goodbye. She told me about all the things she loved and the things that she cared about. And it was just so beautiful to watch and to be a witness to it. This person who was I thought was going to fight until her last breath. And so we were really fortunate. We had this last time where she was in this place of acceptance. And it was just incredible to watch how someone can switch from avoidance to acceptance in a moment when she stopped fighting.
I'm having a hard time talking here.
I'm not, because I have been taught not to cry.
You've been taught not to cry. What is it like for you to tell us about this, Louise?
Well, I can feel like I might cry, but I feel like I get to honour Mum.
Yeah.
Because her anxiety was so high, it was actually really always hard to do that. You know, people that are anxious push other people away. Yeah. As a way of protecting themselves, of not feeling, of not having to feel their own emotions. And to talk about that that time when I saw her, probably the only time in my life that I saw her accept.
Yeah.
Was so beautiful.
Yeah.
Really beautiful.
Did you get a chance to talk to her about that? Did you tell her the shift that you saw?
No. I just rang her friends and sat by her side while she called her friends. And she said funny things like, "Hello, I'm calling to tell you I'm done for."
Okay.
And, you know, she called everyone. She had so many friends. She called every one of her friends and told them, I'm passing away. And it was just really beautiful to hear her talk about all those things and to talk to us, to her children, about the things that she cared about.
Yeah.
And she told stories and we looked at photos and it was just an incredible experience.
Yes.
Really beautiful. So I think that's what acceptance is. And when you're open to acceptance, you just get things. And when you avoid, you shut it away.
And so what has this like, so I've heard you say a lot of times, both here and in, you know, in all our other conversations you and I have had, that this is what you were taught. Like you were taught not to cry. You were taught to not accept. And, you know, as a person who knows you pretty well, you know, I've also seen you in various settings where you have shown something else than what you were taught.
Yeah, I think I was thinking about this, and I think there is only one answer. It's I have been graced with being friends with the most amazing people, and you're one of them, and your mum Nina is another one. But I have been blessed with just the most amazing people who have what I don't have, or what I didn't have when I needed it. And I think surrounding yourself with people or spending time with people who can teach you is really useful. Yeah. And I'm lucky enough to be with people who teach me, the skills that I didn't have. And I have benefited from that. You know, I say to Lisa all the time, "Why are you friends with me?" She's like, "Why are you friends with me?" And that, you know, that's what happens. Yeah. When you have this kind of, you know, difficult kind of trauma background.
Sure. I'm so happy that you're sharing this with us, and I'm really honored to, you know, to witness this, that you're doing this with all of us. Thank you so much for that, Louise. When you work with young people, I'm guessing that you when I work with the people I see will ask me, like, how do I do acceptance? How do I do it? Like the thing you're talking about. What are you telling your clients?
Well, I think there's a difference working. So I work with young people and with women. And I think with women, you know, we can have the kind of conversations that we're having now in quite a deep way. Not me talking about my personal experience like that, but we can talk about times in which we accept and times in which we don't. With adolescents, I think it's really a much harder thing because you need to feel your way into acceptance. You need to feel the times when you don't accept and feel the times when you do. And the only thing that I can try to do with young people is help them be able to be aware of their experience. And so as they talk to me, be able to ask them to be aware of what they're doing and what it's like when they're fighting and what happens when you fight and what happens when you allow your inner experience to be what it is. Yeah. And I feel quite a bit of sadness for young people because the pandemic is tough for them. It's tough. The things that the developmental things that they should be doing have been changed. And they're locked in their houses and they're not socialising. I mean, now lots of the countries are opening up, but it's really difficult. And so there's no better time to talk about how to have those emotions inside you and what it's like when you don't accept and when you fight those things and how that works out through their experience, through their experience.
So it's almost like acceptance is like a felt, it's a doing, and it's an experience rather than something you just understand. Acceptance is not like, okay, I understand, or I it's more like a doing, right?
You should accept now, Rikke. That's what you should do. You should accept this, because you can't change it.
Exactly.
That's not what we do. We really need to get that felt sense. Like, what are you doing right now?
Yes.
What are you doing right now in this moment as you talk to me? What are you doing?
Yes.
And I'm sure even you could answer right now in this moment, what are you doing?
Yes.
You would notice in you, Rikke, different things.
Exactly. Exactly.
Can you answer like an adolescent would answer?
I don't know what, I have no idea what an adolescent would answer, but I know that I'm fighting, tears and everything that's going on. And I have all these ideas. Oh, I shouldn't cry as much on camera. I should look professional. I should look sane. I shouldn't have a dog, biting. There, all of these things, and then choosing to be with all of it, be with the tears and the everything and the love and the mispronunciation of things and everything. So for me, if I were to answer that question, that would be it. Like, acceptance part is allowing myself to be maybe a complete failure on camera, because it's important to me to be here with everybody who's here with us right now.
Thank you.
There's a question.
And that's exactly the way you can do it with an adolescent, just as you did.
Yes.
Noticing the discrimination between accepting and not.
Exactly. And discrimination, I think it's key, like noticing the difference between when you are and when you are not.
Yeah.
Louise, there's a question for you in here, and let's see if you would be willing to answer it. It's, I imagine that Louise, we're going back to your mom now. I imagine that Louise's mom's avoidance served her in some or many ways. I would love to hear how Louise imagines how her mom would have coped raising 6 children by herself if she accepted herself or her emotions more. Like, how would that have looked differently? So if your mom was not non-accepting, how do you think it would have looked differently? What a beautiful question. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Viveka. It's a lovely question. Oh, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say names, but thank you. It's a really nice question. I think what's most important in that question is, how did the avoidance serve her? And I think that's something that we sometimes forget. Avoidance is really useful. It's really useful. It's not a bad thing, and for her, how did it serve her? It helped her cope. There were many, many times when she would never have been able to let her emotions in because she would have fallen apart. And I'm the same. And so many of you are the same. There are times when you go, I'm just coping today because that's what I need to do. And as a short-term thing, that's okay. And even if you're in have a trauma background like she did, in a long-term way, that was all she could do. But there was a time when avoidance was no longer necessary, when her children, the crisis of raising children by herself had passed. And when she saw a psychologist for her anxiety, and she could have made a space to talk about her emotions and how she felt. And there was a place for her to be able to open up to that stuff, but it was not there. And that's not a criticism to her, it's just a fact. Right? I don't even think the word trauma was around in those days. And so I think that knowing this for me has been really useful. Like, I've been able to think about what it would mean for me. I don't want to be on my deathbed fighting my children and saying, make it right. I'm not doing this. I don't want to be on the end of life saying I'm not dying. Not when you're 99. She was just a few weeks off 99. I'm not doing that. And so what I've learned is something different. And I don't know if you know that I'm a Buddhist meditation teacher these days as well. So what I did in COVID is I spent some time joining a Sangha and learning to be a Buddhist meditation teacher. And That's another way of experiencing acceptance, because there's just you. There's nothing else. There's just you.
You keep amazing us, Louise.
And they have a phrase that they use, which they talk about opening the door. And so the first step is to open the door. And I think that's opening the door onto yourself. And that's what I've been trying to do.
Opening the door. Yeah. What are you noticing as you sit here and talk about this?
It actually feels really nice. There's a part of me that thinks I want to run away, but that part's always there. But it actually feels really nice to talk about it. And it's, of course, so nice to talk about it with you too, where I feel safe. You've created this nice, safe space where it feels like it's just you and me.
Yeah.
And that feels good.
So opening the door, I love that expression and the metaphor embedded in that. I know that you wrote something, Louise.
Should we give it some context?
Should we give it some context? Yes.
We'll give it some context. I'll give you some context for the thing that I wrote. I asked Rikke before the webinar, could I read something out? Did she think it would be appropriate for me to read something? Would that be something the listeners might like to hear? And she said yes. And so let me tell you another non-acceptance story. Joseph Ciarrochi and I are writing a book on DNAV for adults. And we have finished the first draft, finished the draft. Yay, right? Yay.
Yay.
But I messaged Joseph. So we're starting to to edit. And I messaged Joseph on Saturday, just the Saturday that had gone. And I said, we can't finish this book. It's complete shit. We cannot finish this book. It's not going to be good. It's really, we need to stop. We just need to put it aside. And he said instantly, Louise, you have said this to me with every book we write at this point when we have a draft. And I think I remember you saying that to me too, Rikke.
Yes.
You did tell me that, didn't you? Before you wrote your book.
Yes, it was the exact same process for me. And I think, sometimes when you are close to other people, I think that this is so beautiful, either with friends or and with patients as well, that you kind of see these patterns and that you are able to give people that perspective. Do you remember the last time you were in the draft? you were having this exact same experience. Here we are again, right? Yeah. You were earlier talking about pointing to experiences. So I love that he did that for you. For me, it was exactly the same. I was ready to toss my book out the window.
Yeah. And that's, I think, part of that acceptance is other people. I'd like to talk about accepting in other people in a bit.
Yes.
But someone else to see your patterns. Joe replied instantly, oh, Louise, do you know this is what you've done at every stage in the book that we've ever written? I'm like, no, and I really didn't know. I was so immersed in this is completely terrible. It's not worth our time. And so the reason I spoke to you, Rikke, about reading something is that a year ago, I finished 80,000 words on a book about taking people to Nepal and the mindful adventures that we run. And I finished the manuscript. And then we had the bushfires, and then we had COVID. And I have not looked at the manuscript in all that time. And after Joe said that to me, I pulled out the manuscript and I thought, okay, maybe it's not completely terrible and I need to do something about it. So I thought I might read something to you.
Yes, please do.
So this little passage is a piece about acceptance and fighting. But before I do, we haven't given people much of a chance for questions. Do we need to give people a chance for questions?
Thank you for reminding me. Like, if there are any, like, you can write to us in the chat, or you can also unmute yourself and just come in here and ask us or Louise a question.
Sorry, I don't mean to be the host. I just didn't want to fill up all the space.
Oh, like, you don't need to apologize. You don't need to apologize. So, guys, if there's ever a question or anything, just come on in here and talk to us.
Feels like you guys are being really authentic, and you're asking, I guess, for any of us who work with people, to walk the talk is just, it has to be that way. Thank you.
That's nice of you to say, Janet. Do you want to say something, Rikke? You're the host.
Can you just notice yourself worrying about the roles here? And I'm guessing you want to respond.
Do you know, I'll tell you a little secret. Because I didn't know, I really didn't know very much about how to socialise. I spent most of my childhood alone and most of my adolescence alone. And I left school when I was 13. I really had no clue about how to socialise. And so because I was intelligent, I thought socialising meant telling people everything you know. And I spent quite a few years doing that. By the time I got to 21, I was working, and my friends nicknamed me Miss Definite because I knew everything.
Yes.
Yeah, I realised that doesn't actually really work in terms of socialising, but it took me a while. I had to learn that the hard way. Miss Definite, they would tell me. So that's why I say to you, you be the host.
Yes. And so, can I just say for the context wise, like, we're all in here. I might be the one organizing this event, but just know that you're all free. Feel free to come on in here and participate in it and connect in any way you want to. And that includes you, Louise. Yes. Okay. Yes. And so when you are so you're going to talk about something you wrote, and that I think is related to Nepal, right? And the book.
There's not much that I do that's not related to Nepal.
No. And I know that you'll probably, well, I don't know. I'm guessing you'll probably be too modest to talk a lot about Nepal. And can I just say, so you are arranging these mindful adventures, and it is where professionals get to climb mountains. Yes, this is not a walk in the park. It's not a walk in the park. It's a walk in Jurassic Park. I'll say that. We're climbing mountains, and I have literally never been in so much contact with fear in my entire life. And I just will tell people this: if there's ever a time you want to push yourself and experience, a life-changing, because it will be, I guarantee, a life-changing experience, please, when COVID is over, look into to going to Nepal with Louise. Those are like mind-blowing. So I'm going to give you the stage so that you can read this, and then as you come out of this, there are a few questions for you. Yes, I saw you saw that. So please read to us this piece that you wrote.
I'll give you some context as I read this. This is a beginning piece that I wrote early on about a trip that I took to Nepal after a traumatic experience, and the reason I thought I'd choose it is I thought it has that flavour of hearing fighting and acceptance. And when we talk about acceptance, we're talking about acceptance of our own experience. We're not talking about accepting of what other people do. That's for a different place. We're talking about accepting of our own emotion, the thing that we can't get away from. So this was a piece about that, and I would encourage you to just listen for the flavour of me accepting and the flavour of me fighting my very own self. It's a short piece and it's called Saying Yes. Lakpa walks in front. Noticing my slowed pace, he motions me to copy him. Left foot, right foot. I get the rhythm. I pause for a microsecond, breathe, right foot, pause for another microsecond, breathe. That's the rhythm. After hours of exhausting up, I feel utterly spent. I steal a look at the peak and realise it is still a long way. These mountains trick the eye. Oh my goodness, I think, I'm not going to be able to do this. It's okay, Mingma replies quietly. Just stop for a minute. Lakpa appears around the next huge boulder, squatting quietly, just waiting. Mountain people are experts at waiting. From his pack, he retrieves a thermos with hot lemon drink. You carried that for me? I pant. He doesn't speak English. He just motions me to sit. We have a view of the world from up here. My eyes follow the sharp ridge we've just come up from, down the brown rocks and scree to the silver riverbed below, and then down to the bank of monsoon clouds that are rising slowly up from the jungle. Each day they come. I steal a look upwards. Ahead is a mass of enormous grey boulders, many of them bigger than cars. After 10 minutes resting, I feel able to go on again. We scramble over the massive rocks for another 3 hours. There's no path. We pick our way through the rockfall. I can see the markers on the peak. They look close, but I know they're still a long way off. We reach 4,700 metres. We have only 85 vertical metres to go, but it still feels like miles. The altitude makes my head pound, my feet tingle, and waves of nausea wash over me. I'm not a tall person. Every leap I take over a large boulder takes so much effort. My head pounds and the dizziness makes me stumble. Every cell in me screams that I have to stop. I try not to cry. Mingma reaches out his hand, strong and large, no stranger to hard work. He steadies me and helps me climb onto the biggest boulders. He drags me over a boulder the size of my house. Dizziness is making it harder with every step. Mingma, I can't. I need to stop. It's still so far. I pant as I lean over, catching my breath. He watches silently and merely signals a rest stop. After a while, when I'm able to speak, I say, I'll give it 10 more minutes and then I'm turning back. He nods, his face unreadable to me. He turns and begins the next step, always up. I feel waves of failure. If I do not reach the top, it will prove that I am indeed weak. I will fail again like that last trip. It will prove my inner critic is right. I feel the regret of turning back, settling on me like concrete shoes. I know if I turn back, it will change my life forever. If I turn back, I will never return to my beloved Nepal. Never. I breathe and pause and try not to cry. And finally, the largest rocks are behind me. In front are small ones. I can step over them easily. I'm too close. I can't turn back now. I stagger. Suddenly, I am just a few metres from the top. I'm so spent I need to pause and breathe, even though I can see there's only 4 steps to go. I lean all the way over my pole, gasping. And then 4 steps. I'm there, the mountain top. 4,985 metres with a 360-degree view, just everywhere you look. Snow-covered peaks, hanging glaciers, black rocks, mountains that are so different to home. It's afternoon and the monsoon clouds swirl in and out, sometimes hiding everything and leaving us in a film of white, like a mystery. Peaks appear and then they suddenly disappear. My heart swells with beauty. With reverence, we tie the prayer flags onto the poles, and I begin to cry again. Hating these tears, I mumble, "Right, let's get down before I cry too much and can't walk." Mingma shakes his head and wordlessly motions me to sit. It's his mountain and he's in charge. I sit. I take in the stillness and become still too. Mountain still. I have accepted it.
What are you noticing right now, Louise?
I love the way you can cry. I really do love the way that you experience your emotions. It's really amazing.
Yeah. And it looked like you were just about to cry too, huh?
Yeah. And what I noticed as I was reading that text is I say that I cried several times. When before I said, I don't cry. Clearly I do sometimes.
And that you're struggling not to cry, right?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for writing this, and thank you so much for reading this to all of us. You know, I hope you see the comments. So beautiful, and what an amazing metaphor for. There are so many to be found in there. The one I take with me is the one where like it's because I have been there too, but knowing that you feel like you can't breathe, you feel like you can't take another step, you're aching everywhere, and it's your mind is telling you there's no way you can do this, and it sounded to me like you took another step
Doing it.
and then another step and then another step with discomfort. I don't hear in this story that you took a step and then balloons fell from the sky and you felt light and happy. Every step was hard, and then you reached the point what that was important to you, the top.
Yeah. Every step was hard and every step was worth it. And you're right. I chose that to read because I thought it's a little piece about acceptance, and that is not about the mountains really. It's about what it's like actually to accept things. Is really difficult, and sometimes it means taking that next step, not because someone else tells you to, but because you want to.
Yes.
Because there's something there that.
And I love that you're talking about the fact that then you got to the top and then you're like, okay, let's get down now before I cry anymore. Like, isn't that amazing? So even when you kind of reach a place, it's hard to stay there then. You want to immediately then go out of that place too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I think, the interesting piece is that sometimes we move so quickly that you're like, when my strong emotions come up, I just want to get out of there.
Yes.
But when I get out of there, what I would have missed is the stillness of the mountains.
Yes.
And the stillness in me. There was a moment there and there is a moment in acceptance everywhere. You don't have to be in a mountain. There's a moment in acceptance when you realize inside yourself that you can do this.
Yeah.
And if you rush too quick, you don't. And, maybe my mum got that too when she went, I can die.
Yeah.
I can stop.
And that is something I find to be so, acceptance can be so hard. This is why we wanted to talk about this. It can be so hard to do, and still it's something that we all can choose to, it's a muscle, if you will, that we all have. It's a skill that we all have. For some it's not particularly toned and we need to strengthen it, yet for all of us it is possible. There's
and I think
Yes, come on.
There's a question we need to answer. But I think there's something really important before we get to that question we looked at, and that is the other reason that I thought this piece would be useful, Rikke, is that one of the things I've learned the most is acceptance is better when it's with other people.
Oh, yes.
That other people will guide you to the part that you can't do.
Yes.
So alone, in that story, alone I would have turned around, or alone I would have got to the top and went, right, I'm out of here.
Yes.
But if someone else is there to guide you to acceptance and to be with you and hear you and slow you down when they hear you going too fast, then that's probably been the hardest lesson of all for me, is that I need other people.
Yes.
I can't do it alone. I need other people. That's been the hardest part to accept.
Yeah.
Really the hardest.
That is so beautiful. And I listened to you when you were talking in the beginning about following somebody else's steps. For me, when doing your trip, sometimes that's what I needed to do, like just literally follow the breathing and the steps of one of the guides, because I needed to tap on to that. And I find this so useful, and I do this in therapy without even words. I try to be the one who breathes and walk the pace for the client without talking about, now I'm doing this because, I'm just doing it so that the client will follow. That was a beautiful piece. I remember when you and me were in Nepal, and Mom and Jenny, who's here, when we were in Nepal, I remember we were going somewhere, and I was asking you, I was like, are you seriously telling me that we're going to get up there? And I do not remember what you said. I just remember that you were lying. Like literally, you chose. You chose to. Well, you said something. You were not lying in my face. And no, it's not. But you said something, and I understood. You are now trying to rescue me from my own brain, because if that understands that we're going to go up there, I will literally have a meltdown. So, again, I want to be mindful, not accuse you of lying, but I was just saying you were trying to help me see something else, that the great danger and the great obstacle that was in my way. And
well, sometimes you need to look at the obstacle just in front. I might have said something like, we'll just do this bit.
Yes, we're just going to go over here first, or
we're
something
just going
like
to go over here.
Yes.
And you can imagine with a client, with some of the clients that we work with, if you've got something really difficult to try to work with, and somebody says, well, we're going to get you into a full place of acceptance, and no,
yes,
I'm not ready for that yet.
Yes, exactly.
And other
so
people.
Yes, we need other people, and so I'm not gonna dwell too much in this, but there are some phrases that I took from our trip with Nepal. But asking for help and allowing yourself to be carried. Right? Allowing others to actually carry you and help you. So there's a question from others. Yes, from a good Norwegian doctor who is challenged with acceptance. And I'm guessing, so help us out here if I'm not asking the question, Mr. I won't say your name, but because you know who you are. I'm guessing we're tapping into this where you go, oh, you should just accept it. And people go, what should I accept? The loss of my children, or the crime, or my trauma, or etc. So can you put some words onto that, Louise, how sometimes we're really triggered by the word acceptance itself?
Oh, yeah, that's one of the problems. And it's a great question. It's one of the problems about acceptance. Acceptance makes it feels like that we just have to accept everything,
Yeah.
And that's not what we mean by acceptance. Acceptance is about accepting the things inside you that you can't change. And that's what I think we've been trying to talk about, is this, the part of you that you can't change, your emotions, your feelings, your humanity, accepting your need for other people. That was the hardest one for me, accepting that I need other people. Accepting how you feel. It's all, acceptance is inside you. We never, ever are suggesting that you need to accept a situation, especially a situation where there's danger or threat. Would you like to add some more, Rikke?
Yeah, so that for some, I think it sounds like or smells like resignation or tolerate, or just, there's an expression in Swedish called gilla läget, which means to like how it is. So there's all these, I think, uh, understandings about acceptance that are sometimes not very helpful when we are working with it, because people think they should just lean back and tolerate whatever there is. And so for me, the way I see it, acceptance is an active choice of willingness to be with whatever there is right now, as hard as that might be.
Inside you, absolutely,
Inside you,
because we can't
exactly.
fight what is inside us.
No.
I have used acceptance. When I first learned to act, I've used acceptance to accept everything that other people did around me with the idea that, they would say that's my value and that's what I'm doing. And I would think, oh, well, I have to accept that that's what they do. But it doesn't work like that. Acceptance is acceptance inside you. And sometimes we need to have courage instead.
Yeah.
And that's the courage to be able to recognize that when people are hurting us or when people are doing something that we shouldn't be accepting, that we should be calling out.
Exactly. And so one of the things, so you know this, I work a lot with women as well and female empowerment. And one of the things that I'm so passionate about is teaching people to set boundaries, to say no, to prioritize themselves, to choose self-care. And the acceptance part in that for these women and for myself is the acceptance of then me feeling selfish or me being afraid that you won't like me because I'm saying no to something. So my hope is that people get that acceptance is a choosing of a willingness to be with your inner universe and navigating in this world in ways that are workable and in line with your values, right?
Exactly, because sometimes we say we're accepting, but what we're really doing is fighting ourselves.
Exactly.
And that's hard.
It is hard. And one of the things that I love that you were saying, and you've been saying this from the very beginning, that acceptance is when we do it, we want to point to the experience of it. We want to tell the client. So instead of going, instead of talking about acceptance, I would much rather go, so when you took that step, feeling like you were about to vomit and you were about to cry and you wanted to turn around, but you actually lifted your right foot and then your left foot. That's the shit can't swear. That's the thing I'm talking about. When you cried.
And when you said that bit, I felt this strong sense of empowerment.
Yes.
Like when you took that step, when you put your left foot and your right foot, I just had this wash of feeling empowered.
Yes. And so that is the thing, right? Because if we just talk about acceptance, you should accept, you should make, like, regardless of, I think, the words that we're using, you should allow, if we can talk to, when you did the thing you did, you were practicing acceptance. When you allow yourself to cry on camera here, and I saw Louise, I saw the way you were, I noticed your breath, and I noticed that, and I noticed that you kind of allow that to be there. That is acceptance in action. When you took that step, when you read about your mom, so I just wanted to, if I hope it's clearer for people that we want to look at the person that we're talking to and notice when acceptance is happening in their repertoire, and we want to reinforce that and make that explicit, because then it's much easier to understand. I don't need to understand acceptance. I don't need to understand the functions of it. I don't need to understand that. What I need to understand is that I can stand on a mountain, I can lift up my foot, I can move it a few centimeters, and I can put it down and I can repeat. That's what I need to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Or I can sit by my mum when she's unwell, or my mum can accept the fact that life is ending. All of those things. are really what it's about. And I love the way you just described it, Rikke, because you're being an ACT therapist right now. And with your other podcasts, sometimes I've listened to them a couple of times and I've shared them with people I supervise. And I've said, listen to what she's doing. She's opening up the space for me to talk and then rephrasing it and saying, what was it like when you did that? And then I get acceptance. I never use the A word, acceptance.
No, me neither.
Because it's a word that I fought all against, and I still fight against it. It's a tricky word, but if you help people feel, then they've got it. They'll know that.
Exactly. And I'm just kind of just say, are you honored that I'm very honored that you see that this is what I'm trying to do. I would if there's a difference I could make in this world, it would be to not have more people talk about ACT, but to actually do ACT. And I think that sometimes there's a big difference. And I think that experience, and, creating an environment, modeling and evoking and reinforcing the behaviors that you are seeing. This sounds very geeky, but actually that's what I'm trying to do. And I hope you guys see that, like, this is ACT in action.
Yes. Yeah, it's those subtleties and together.
And together. Yes. So we're at the very end, and before we do that, I see there's thank yous and peace and joy and hearts. Are there any questions, comments, feedback for Louise and myself at this very last minute? Now is the time. Any practical advice for getting back into acceptance? Know how good it feels, but difficult to stay in. Like, any practical advice to get back into acceptance? Yeah, go on.
Elizabeth, I would say practical advice. I think I don't think you can get back into acceptance. I think the thing to practice is awareness.
Yes.
What am I doing now? And then we can't always see our own patterns. So sometimes it's awareness of what we're doing now. And then sometimes it's being able to connect with other people who can help you know what you're doing now. We don't always have that benefit, but that can be really useful too. But I think really awareness, like, where am I? What am I doing? And I can fight right to the end. And so I'm just aware of when I'm fighting and when I'm not. And capturing those little peak moments. It doesn't matter where you are, whether you're on a mountain or, with your family, or, finishing an essay, or, it doesn't matter where you are. When you catch that piece of acceptance, tell yourself, this is what it feels like. This is it, right? And store them away as little kind of memories, that time when you were here and that happened. And then you can draw on them and you can say, oh, this is like being on that mountain. Yes. I'll tell you one little story about acceptance. When my youngest boy was little, we went ice skating and he was too anxious to skate. And he stepped outside of the skating rink and it was a birthday party. And he just watched everyone ice skate while he stood on the side. And it was so sad. And when he got home, we talked about how hard it was. And then within a couple of weeks, we went ice skating, and just us, no birthday party. So there's no social reinforcer to worry about. And he ice skated and he did a beautiful job. And I would say to him for a number of years after that, this will be like ice skating. And so that's what I mean by find your story. It doesn't matter what it is. I would just say this is like ice skating, where you can be able to accept it and have your vulnerability and do it. And so I think find your story. Have you got a story, Rikke? I know we have to finish.
But have you got a story? I have a billion stories. And one of them, some of you might have heard before, but that was, back on the mountain in Nepal. Oh, here we go. But I'm going to fast forward. But, as you probably know, my mom was struggling, and Mom is here now. And I saw her being helped and being carried. And I'm not going to say a lot about that particular story because I've said so much in other podcasts, but just know that was a beautiful moment for me when I saw, okay, sometimes we're at something that is so hard and we need to ask for help and we need to allow others to help us. And so I've been talking with my clients, with my family, with everybody who would listen to this moment where you are in your life, where it's completely overwhelming and where you need help. And so my son, and this is why I keep crying, whenever I talk about people I love, you know I'll cry. And so my son was suffering from heartbreak a year later from Nepal. And I can share this, he is okay with that. And he came to me in the middle of the night and he woke me up and he said, Mom, I think I'm at my mountain right now. And I just can't get up there. Can you help me, Carrie? So that's for me, like, that's a story that is so profound, because he's never been on a literal mountain like that, like literally on a mountain like that. But he took the function of the story and he realized that I'm in a situation that is too hard. I need somebody to help me and I need somebody to help me carry my emotions. There's no way I can ever tell that story. I'm sobbing every time, Louise. Thank you for bringing us to Nepal. Thank you for coming to this webinar. I cannot tell you how much how much you keep impressing me. And I think I know that people see this too. So to everybody who's here with us right now, who's watching this afterwards, thank you so much for joining us and coming in here, being vulnerable and hanging out with us. It means the world to me. I'm going to close the bar now. I'm going to ask Mom and Louise to hang around. We're just going to, when we lock the doors and clean the floor and all of that. So for the rest of you, the bar is closing. And I actually have the next time I'm going to do a webinar, I'm going to do it with, Janina, Louise, superwoman, superhero therapy. So to be continued. Thank you to everybody who was here. Thank you, Louise. I love you to the moon and back. And I can't wait to connect with you, Louise, and the rest of you again. So bye,
Thank
everybody.
you so much, everyone, for joining. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Great to see you.
Bye, Jenny.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Hey, Jack.
Bye.
Bye.